And first thing we'll look at is 2-pin. So, just like whenever we looked at masking, rotoscoping, and chroma key, I like actually, when I've got objects to track and compositions to make, I like to make them directly from the original footage if I can. So rather than creating a composition the size I want, 1920 by 1080, laying my footage in there and resizing it and then working from that, I'll usually just start it as, just select the footage that I want to work with to start with and make a comp from that selection. That makes sure that the footage is the same resolution, the same frame rate, the whole 9 yards. And while it doesn't matter as much for tracking, it creates a composition, and then I can take that composition and use it wherever I want to use it at. So just kind of the way I prefer to work, generally speaking. But so I've got my footage, or my footage here, and it's kind of crooked. I don't like how crooked it is. So I think I am gonna rotate it a little bit, scale it up just a hair. All right, so it's a little straighter. All right, and then we do all this from the tracking window. So if I go to my window menu, down towards the bottom, tracker is what I want. It's actually already open, so probably, yeah. I get this tracker window and just select my footage, and it kind of highlights all of the different options we've got. So what we're going to do is actually track motion first. The two we're actually just going to look at track camera and track motion here, but track motion is the first one I'm going to use, and that'll allow me to do 1-pin or 2-pin tracking pretty easily. And the only difference between 1-pin and 2-pin tracking is the number of parameters that I want it to track. So in this particular case, I want it to actually track scale, and I think we'll have it track all three: position, scale, and rotation, although scale and position are the primary ones. But if I click on track motion, tracker 1, it actually drops a single pin in here. If I only wanted to track position, I'd just use this one tracker cube and track from that. But since I actually also want to do rotation and scale, I'm just going to click on each one of those, and now I get two tracking boxes. So if I take a look at what I've got here, basically I've got 2 boxes connected by a pin. The inside box is the tracker itself. That's what I'll use to identify the points that I want to track. The outer box is a search box, basically. So usually I'll make this a little bit bigger so that if as it tries to resolve the points that I pick, if they drift a little too far, this search box will still allow it to maintain the lock on them. So, which is kind of the best way I can describe it. Generally speaking, I want the tracker box itself, the inside one, to be on the smaller side, and then I only want my outer box to be as big as I need it to be. It would make sense. You might actually think, we'll make it nice and big. That way, it'll always stay locked and tracked. But the bigger you make it, also the slower the tracking goes, and it doesn't necessarily work the way you would expect that way. So, but we're going to use this area to identify the areas that we want to track. And what we want to track are areas of high contrast. So within this particular image, There's actually lots of them. So, I'm thinking maybe I'll try and track this corner and this corner of this window frame. Where I want to put the asset that I'm going to lock to it doesn't really matter so much, but I do kind of want to be in the general area. So I'm just going to click inside of this and drag it up, and you see that it kind of magnifies that entire area. And I'm just going to drop it so that that little crosshairs in this middle of it is right over top of that corner. And then I'll do the same thing with this one. Grab it, drag it over here, and place it right over top of that corner. And then I really want to track that. If I make this too big, there's a chance that the tracker will get confused from time to time and pick up wrong points and kind of stray off, and you can always fix those things. But I do want to make sure that I think whenever I set this, I'm going to make this a little smaller and slide it over a bit. And then might have to try this a couple of times. Sometimes you do, but I'll set my outer box about like that. I'm a little worried about the corner up here on this side, but we'll see what we get. So scale that down a little bit. Scale this guy down. And I kind of zoom out here. Now I will, once I have my points identified, all I really need to do is go into, back over into my tracker window, and we've got these analyze buttons. I'm starting to the very beginning, so I'm going to analyze forward. If I start later on, I can analyze backwards. And then these will analyze one frame at a time. So I'm just going to start with the forward, analyze forward button, click on that. And you'll see that as the camera pulls in, wow. Well, it never works right the first time. Let it play through. So you'll see what it does. It actually tracks those corners, and it creates a keyframe all the way out, from frame by frame. So, and it did not stray at all. I'll be darned. That's kind of cool. All right, so I'll do this a second time, and I'll make it not work quite right. But anyway, that's all. I mean, that tracked those two corners as far as it could. Notice that, I mean, whenever this portion of the window leaves the frame, though, that's kind of the end of the tracking. That's all it can do. So if I need more than that, I probably actually need to find a piece of an area that will be in frame longer than what this top bar is. But sometimes it's just, you got to kind of look at your footage, determine how much you need, and determine what the best places to kind of to track from are. So, but that works. So we'll do that, and then I'm going to add a null to my scene. So basically, what we're going to do is we've got all this tracking data, and it's going to apply to a null object, and then once the tracking data is applied to the null object, then we can place anything else in our scene that we want, parent it to that null object, and it'll follow and pick up all of those, the scale, the rotation, and the position properties. So I'm going to go down here first and new null object, which will just drop the null object in the middle of the scene here somewhere. And then let's check the composition. Yeah. All right. So it places it in the composition. I'm working in the video layer. So what I want to do is come over here and I want to change the target. So if I click Edit Target, I'm going to change it to this null object that I just made and say OK. And then all I need to do is apply. And I'll apply both the X and the Y dimensions. If I'm only tracking left to right, I can just apply the X dimension. If I'm doing up and down, I can apply the Y dimension only. But I'll do both because I kind of need them both. So X and Y, say OK. And now I'm back into the composition. And if we scrub through this, you'll see that the null object is locked right to the corner of that window. And now all I really need to do is let's create a type object. Oh, come on. York. And I'm just going to kind of move it down here to where I want it, scale it down a little bit. Make it nice and dark red. Open up my leading a little bit. And I'll just parent that to this null object. So go to parent link, parent it to the null. Part of the reason we can use pretty much any object we want to assign that data to. The reason we use a null object is because by default it's invisible, it doesn't render at all. So it's an object that can hold all the parameters, but we'll never see it on screen. So now that I've got those parented up, if I play this, my text follows right along with the window until that part, and then it gets stuck. And the reason it gets stuck is that's the end of my tracking data. So ideally, in a piece of footage like this, I probably just really want this much of it, and then I'm on to something else, you know? If I need more, I mean, there actually really isn't in this much more that I could have grabbed, because if I had to grab the bottom of the window area, it leaves the scene about the same time as the top part does. So that probably worked best. But you know, I can kind of take that, just blend it into the window so we sort of see through it a little bit. But really, that's 2-point tracking, and it's really as simple as that. I mean, nothing too tricky about it. So I do want to do one though where it doesn't track as well. I almost always do this a couple of times before I find some settings that actually work well for the entire bit. Usually it'll track for a little bit and then it'll get confused or lost, stray off. But this one actually worked right. So there's that 2-point tracking. So let's do that again. Oops. Actually, I'm just going to select this footage, the same footage. Oops. Create a. Actually, let's rename this composition. Clean New York track. All right. So selecting that same footage again, I'm going to create another composition. And let's try to do this again and not do. Maybe I'll pick the bottom part this time, a different area. Uh, or I'll try the top part. All right, so let's select that footage. Go back to my tracker panel. Track motion. And I'm gonna track motion. So there's my first one. Rotation and scale. We go to that corner and take this one to this corner. And I'm not going to adjust them any further than that. So we'll take that and let's try that. So I've got them positioned. I'll just hit my analyze forward. Twice in one day. All right. I am going to make this not work. And this is usually not my problem. Let's move it down here. I know it'll lose it down here. So I'll try to track this corner where, so part of the reason I'm sure this is not going to work is quite right, without a lot of help, is that there's a couple other things going on here. Up here, the contrast was nice and clean all the way through, from beginning to end. It never really crossed paths with anything else. Down here, the contrast isn't quite as high, but I'm also going to have, I think the search box is also going to pick up some stuff in the background at some point or another. So we'll put it down there, and let's analyze forward. There we go. So when I say this starts to stray, that's what I mean. It's supposed to stay locked down here, but what it actually did was picked up the contrast in the building that's behind that's outside and went off track. So, and a lot of times you'll have a perfectly good track up to a point, and something like this will happen, and then everything after that point will all be good too. But you can still fix it. So, which I'll do by, I'm just going to kind of go back here. And if I scrub this through one, just really slowly, pay attention to it until the track starts to go away. So it goes away right there. There, and then it pops there. So at that point, I'm just going to grab this box, drag it back down to where it should be, and I could try to resolve from, hit the play button again and try to do the rest of it, but I think that it's still going to kind of get off track, so I'm going to do a few more, I think. And I'm just going to go forward one frame at a time, grab it, pull it back down to where it belongs, go another frame ahead, another frame, and we'll see if from this point forward, if it'll stay, if it'll track correctly. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to hit the play button again. And there we go. Although, now what did I lose? Oh. So this guy got lost. And I don't exactly know why he got lost, but let's find out. So, command, we're okay until there. So, pull that back down. And I'll just kind of keep, oh, no. Even I got confused there. Tracking to the wrong point. All right, so there we're still good. Here, what happened? Here it needs to come down to this point. So that's what, a lot of very similar areas here. Even I got confused as to which one I needed to track to, so. All right, let's see if we can't get this back. And then we look like we're in the clear, so let's just try to. What do we got? Okay. So anyway, this one's taken a little bit more work to get it right than the first time did because I tracked a different area. But once, I get everything where I want it, let's see, there, oops. No, down here. Do. All right, so finally, I got those. And I can use those the same way that I just used the first set of tracking data I had. But just to sort of show, you do lose the tracking data sometimes, and you just go back and you fix a couple of frames and then try it again, get it clear of that area that distracted it, and then the rest of it should handle most of it on its own. So but that gets us data we can track. And then again, we'll just add that null object, which I should really name it. This is our tracking data. And then change our target to that tracking data. Say okay. If I want, I can also rename this tracker because I can put I can track multiple positions in a particular piece of footage. So let's do that. Say apply, that'll apply all the settings to it, X and Y. And then we can move on. So let's see. So I can also select this footage again and click track motion, And you see this one's now called tracker 3. So it'll just create new trackers. And maybe this one I decide I just want to track, let's see. Oh, perfect. Maybe on this one we're just going to track the Empire State Building back here in the background. This one I'm only going to track position. I'm not going to do scale in the rest of them. So I'll just pick, maybe this would be better, this corner. Slide that in a little tighter. And then hit play or analyze forward. It's kind of getting, that probably wasn't a great area to try to track, but I just wanted to do a second one within the same scene. So let's see here what happens. He goes, back. Yeah, that gets off the jury. Maybe instead of doing that, I should, let's undo. There we go. That might just mean I need a better place to track from, a better spot to track, actually. I think it's getting confused with this point up here. Maybe if I size this down. Let's see what happens. Do that. Oh, that was dumb. All right, do that. Pull it back down here. All right, let's try it again. And still not very good. I could just try, rather than worrying about all this, actually, rather than doing that, let's just finish tracking that out. Try it again. It actually, yeah, no, it doesn't. What you can also do is, it basically it drops a keyframe every single frame to track that point. What you can also do sometimes is, once it gets back on track, like if I come back here, I could go in and find some of these spikes and actually just delete them, these keyframes. Although those ones don't do me any good. But if I just get one or two places where it loses track, I can delete a keyframe all right. it'll just jump that frame. It'll kind of smoothly transition through it. So, like I could go grab these one at a time. And do that. So now it tracks it through. So on and so forth. It's just a matter of finding a good spot. But I figure not showing it working right is probably more helpful than showing it work the right way, because you almost always have to, when you're tracking stuff like this, you almost always have to troubleshoot it, fix keyframes here and there. And I only had one pin that time because I was only tracking position. I didn't turn on my rotation and my scale. So that's why I only had the single pin. Usually when I do this, I'll have like a highway with freeway with cars on it, that I'll pick a car and just track a car through. But I should have figured that was a little too much going on in there. So, but to get a good track, sometimes it's just kind of hunting around until you find the right thing. So, since my only point to that last one was just to show you how to correct it when it strays, what did I do with my New York type? So that's 2-point tracking, regular pin tracking. The other process is camera tracking. And so I'll move on from this one, and I'm going to I'll start with this one. Select that one, create a new comp from that selection. And pretty much what I want to be able to do is track a graphic to this area of this building. Basically apply it to it. So for a piece of footage like this, we're actually going to track the camera's position that shot the footage. So we're just going to select track camera this time, and whenever I do, it analyzes the whole thing, and it takes a few minutes to do it. So we'll just kind of wait on it. But where with the first form of tracking, we had either one or two pins, this is going to create a whole boatload of markers. And the general process is, once this finishes, we'll have all these little markers all over our scene, and we're just going to kind of hover over them until we find a combination that will create a plane that matches the plane that we want to track to. It creates like a little target, and we'll build our tracking items off of that. But as far as the process goes, I think this is actually a little bit simpler than 2-point tracking is pretty easy, but this is pretty simple as well. So we'll just wait on this, and usually it gives you a progress over here, so it's like 67% done, about 20 seconds left. And most of the time too, we don't even really have to necessarily mess with anything in the effect panel. But we'll just wait on this to finish. Now it's solving for the camera. And there we go. And here's, I said it's going to create a bunch of little points. You got all these little points that come over here. I just kind of hover over different areas and I pay attention to that little target to see what it's giving me. And I'm looking for a combination here to where the where that target looks like it's just laying on the surface that I want to track to. So like there, that's not really right. Then it actually triangulates between multiples, between three of them. But if I come down here to like the red one or right here in the middle between these three, that's a pretty decent, I mean, that looks like it's sitting on the surface. So I'm just going to click on that, which selects those 3 points. Then if I hold down my control key again, I'm just going to create a solid and a camera. And I think this is easier for the side of buildings, that kind of thing. And you'll notice down here in our timeline, we now have a 3D tracker camera, as well as a solid, and it's a 3D object. And I'm just going to grab that solid, and I'm going to adjust it just a little bit. Oops. W, let's rotate it. Grab the right thing. There we go. Rotate it around just to sort of fine tune it. Looks pretty good. And now if I kind of just scrub through this, you'll see that it follows that building. So that just kind of creates our object to track to. So I'm going to select this object now, this track solid, right click on it, and I'm actually going to pre-compose. Select the solid, and let's pre-compose it, make a composition out of it. Call it our tracking shape. Say OK. And now I can open this up and I can modify it, add whatever I want to it. So I've got, I think I brought over, did I? I did not. Let's grab, go back to my footage folder. I did. Oh, there it is. It is there. All right. So I've got this shape, create a composition out of it. I'm just going to open that up. And I need something that's, if I go back and take a look at my footage real fast. I want something that's sort of tall and thin. So basically like I could probably do like an 1820 by 9, or a 1080 by 1920 composition. Just because the composition that it makes is square doesn't mean it has to stay that way. So I'm just going to open my composition settings and we'll change that to, you see it's pretty big now. I want a, let's just make it taller. Something like that. And turn off that solid. Then I'm just going to drag, I've got this logo. I'm going to put in here. do that. Put a solid in it. Make it like grayish. And then come back over to our composition, and it replaces it with what I just created. And I can open up my scale settings, increase its size, grab it, move it down here a little bit, maybe line it up with the top of that. And if we multiply that in, what do we get? Let's try a different blending mode. Screen. Maybe soft light. Darks and lights. All right. We'll go back to normal, and we'll just adjust the opacity on it a little bit. Drop it down a hair. And then we'll just do that. Let the brick show through for now. So you've got that. And if we play that through, that shape tracks pretty nicely to the shape, to that wall. So makes a pretty nice track. You know, there were lots of other markers in this scene too. I could, if I wanted to put something over here on this wall, I can set that up as well. If I go back in here, I can track this again. I probably should have picked a couple of shapes the first time through, but what am I doing? There. It's not picking up another camera for me. All right. So I tracked to that wall pretty well. If I go, I've got another piece of footage here too that I can do this with. Let's try this. Much bigger city here. If I hit track camera, we'll just give it a few minutes. This is what I'm going to do differently. So for that wall, it made sense. It worked well to make a camera in a solid, because a solid was really kind of what I needed. Here I'm going to actually create a camera in a null, and then that null object will carry the data, the tracking data. So And this one's being very slow. But I always find the null and the solid object, like I did the first time through, to be the best, most reliable way of doing it. I always have less trouble with that method, but I'm not sure that'll work here. I'm not sure the solid will work here with this footage, so. Doop, 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 doop. We're getting there. Sometimes when it generates all these markers, you have a hard time finding a set that'll actually give you what you want. And we can try and fix that a little bit by changing the shot type. But, so here in the city footage, if I hover around, what I'm really kind of looking for is a solution that gives me basically the ground plane. What do I do? There we go. Doesn't look like it angles quite right. That looks halfway decent, doesn't it? If I can't find one, I can always go change to specify angle, and it'll resolve the points. And sometimes that'll help me get a better track, but like that one's giving me the side of that one building pretty accurately. Same thing here. It's too shallow. Let's go back to where we were. I had one I liked down here better. We'll try that. Then control click on it. And instead of creating a solid in a camera, I'll create a null in a camera. And you see the difference is just it gives me a null instead of that solid. And then let's set type. Down here, create a 3D object out of it. And I'm going to try to kind of position it a little bit. It's pretty close. Grab my null, open the position, copy it, go to my, paste that in. There we go. And then I can sort of slide this back. But you see it kind of, it's not really quite the ground plane, but it's close enough for what I'm doing, I think. We'll do that, drop it. And now if I play that through, it'll track pretty decently. There. That's better. City was so lame. So, gives us a bunch of different options. I can play around with that a little bit more and get it, line it up better, but it does a nice job of, oops, let's stop this, go back. I think it does a pretty nice job of setting up the angle to something we can actually use. There. And really it's that 3D camera that's doing all the work for the most part. That's what allows me to still make adjustments to to my type, even after I've resolved all of my so that's tracking with the camera tracker. And I can still do other, things with this. I mean, it'd be kind of nice, I think, to set it in behind some of these buildings maybe. So I could probably rotoscope or rotobrush a few of these to do that. But all in all, it does a pretty nice job. Let's do that. Pull that back. So any questions on either one of those? It does a nice job. The 2-point tracking on the window was really pretty nice and clean. And then, that camera tracker works out pretty nicely as well. So, but that's those two trackers. And I figured I'd just stop there. That's almost an hour, so. But if you have any other questions about it, that's,